Profound and subtle Dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we hear and follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Next, let's continue our study of the Shurangama Sutra. Currently, in the Shurangama Sutra, we are discussing the 25 great sages. They attained realization through different causes and conditions. Previously, we covered the 5 faculties, then the 6 sense objects, the 6 consciousnesses, the 7 elements, and so on. We have already discussed 9 sages who broke through to enlightenment through different faculties or objects. Today, we will talk about the 10th sage. Today is the 10th sage, focusing mainly on the body consciousness. The previous one should be, is this the body faculty or the body consciousness? Ah yes, the body faculty. He should have awakened through the body faculty. We are discussing Pilindavatsa. If we translate his name, it means residual habits. The habits that remain, residual habits. Why is he called residual habits? He still carried some habitual tendencies from his past lives. What kind of habits? He had been a Brahmin for 500 lifetimes. As a result, in this life, he was exceptionally arrogant. He also had some supernormal powers. Whenever he crossed the Ganges river, he would speak to the goddess of the Ganges, the river deity, in a highly discriminatory tone, saying, "Little slave girl, stop the flow of this river for me." He frequently acted this way. Eventually the river goddess became quite upset. She went to complain to Shakyamuni Buddha. The Buddha then reprimanded him, telling him he should not be arrogant toward any sentient being or discriminate against them in that manner. However, such habits are hard to break. He still said to the river goddess, "Little slave girl, please don't be angry. Please don't hold resentment." He continued to use that exact phrase. Even the Buddha's guidance couldn't change this habit. Why was this? It is said that because this river goddess had been his servant in a past life, the karmic habits of these two sentient beings always resonated with each other. There is such an explanation. Regardless, he is known as residual habits. His name is Pilindavatsa. Pilindavatsa stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, "After I had first committed myself to following the Buddha on the path, I heard the Thus Come One say many times that nothing in this world can bring true joy. Here, he says this sage residual habits. He stood up from his cushion, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and respectfully said to the Buddha, "When I first generated the aspiration and began studying the path with the Buddha, at that time, what did I repeatedly hear? I heard the Thus Come One say that all phenomena in the world are things that cannot bring true joy. There is nothing to be joyful or happy about, because, as everyone knows, everything in the world is characterized by suffering, emptiness, non-self, and impermanence. If this is the case, things we feel bring joy, or things we perceive as stable, are ultimately unreliable and subject to destruction. Therefore the Buddha frequently taught me that there is nothing truly joyful in the world." Such was the teaching. With this understanding, one day as I was reflecting upon this teaching during my alms round in the city, I failed to notice a poisonous thorn lying in the road. I stepped on it, and pain suffused my entire body. I reflected on the sensation. I was aware of a deep pain, but I was also aware of my awareness of the pain, and I realized that in the pure mind there is neither pain nor awareness of pain. Here he says, after that, I was constantly reflecting on this. One time when I went into the city to beg for alms, my mind was still continuously contemplating this. My mind was contemplating the teaching I just mentioned, that there is no true joy in the world, the principles of suffering, emptiness, and non-self. perhaps because my mind was too focused, I unknowingly, while on the road, stepped on a poisonous thorn which pierced my foot. Later, because it was poisonous, an unbearable pain spread throughout my entire body. Without realizing it, this body, his whole body, from top to bottom, his entire body was in extreme pain. Consequently, he was in intense agony. At this time he himself recalled and reflected, actually this pain mainly exists because there is awareness. With this awareness held a deep perception, a feeling of pain, a sensation of pain. Such awareness, although it certainly exists in the realm of delusion, in the conventional world, it is a sensation of pain, but observing it more closely, that awareness, during his observation, the sensation being perceived is indeed painful, but the mind that perceives, when observing this mind, it is pure, untainted, and has no sensation of pain whatsoever. What is the result of this observation? There is neither a feeling of pain that is experienced, nor an experiencer that feels the pain. In other words, both the perceiver and the perceived cease to exist. When you truly observe this, as we may all know, when we are in extreme pain, if you do not observe it, it is definitely there. Whether it is being pierced by a thorn or being slashed by a knife, there is suffering. But when you truly investigate it, the entity that suffers and the suffering itself, both, you could say that in mere appearances there is this sensation of pain. But when you truly examine this mind, how is this pain established? At that moment, the so-called pain cannot be found. So at this time, he said, I had this further thought, how can it be that one body has two awarenesses? I held fast to this thought, and before long my body and mind became suddenly empty. During the next 21 days my outflows gradually ceased. So it was that I became an arhat. The Buddha himself verified that I need no further instruction. Then he contemplated again. Actually, all of my pain mainly comes from our physical body. If you haven't realized emptiness, no matter where you go, you carry suffering with you. I read a phrase in the Satyasiddhi Shastra that says it very well. The body is the cause of suffering. Holding this cause of suffering, one experiences suffering wherever they go. The body is truly the cause of suffering. If we cling to this body, we are similarly clinging to the cause of suffering. As long as you have this body, no matter where you go, this feeling of suffering is always present. Some people might think, perhaps my body feels very unwell in Larungar. If I go to Chengdu, it will be better, but Chengdu might be even more painful. Going somewhere else might be better, yet you still encounter this. If the mind has not attained realization, mental suffering is unceasing. If the body has not realized its true nature, the body also continually experiences various sufferings, as long as you carry this vessel of suffering. So many sutras explain that our body is equivalent to a vessel of suffering, a condition for suffering, a root of suffering. They use these terms to describe it. But if we contemplate further, as I just mentioned, and observe the mind that is perceived and the mind that perceives, when examining these two, how could it be that within one body there are two different awarenesses? That is impossible. Thus we gather our deluded thoughts. After this, in a very short time, this was mainly recounted by him, recounted by residual habits himself. He subsequently continued to practice, and before long his body and mind suddenly became empty. There was no more sensation, no more suffering. He rested completely in his realized state. In the Zen tradition we often say, maintain this state. Maintain, meaning to safeguard and sustain this state of both body and mind being empty. By continuously maintaining this state, within 21 days, all his outflows were completely purified, and he attained the fruition of an arhat. At that time, the Buddha personally verified it, stating that he had realized the stage of no more learning. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I believe that to purify one's tactile awareness until the body is forgotten is the best method. Then, if the Buddha asks me about the cause of Bodhi, what is the method of perfect penetration, based on what I have realized, the state I have realized through my practice, then it should be pure awareness and forgetting the body. Pure awareness is a completely pure awakening. To be free from, or to discard, or to forget one's impure body and mind. Primarily, our current body is a condition for suffering. But if we recognize its true nature, it can be considered pure, a cause for enlightenment. So for him, this is the best method. Just now, this body was also viewed as the sole and best condition for realization. He relied on the body to attain realization. Therefore, although there was some suffering in appearance, this suffering was also a cause for his realization. Sometimes we might accidentally get a thorn stuck in our body, or encounter some suffering and attain enlightenment from it. A couple of days ago something got stuck in my foot too, but I haven't become enlightened yet. It just hurts a bit. We should contemplate it this way, but this is how it is. This is a very good method. This is the 10th sage we discussed. Then the 11th sage corresponds to the cognitive faculty. The one who realized awakening, relying on the cognitive faculty, is Subhuti. As everyone knows, Subhuti is often referred to in Chinese as born of emptiness, because when he was born, many resources and many objects in his home completely vanished into emptiness. His family was very frightened. As for the details, they invited physiognomists, fortune-tellers. The fortune-teller was very skilled, saying that in the future, for his family and for the whole world, he would be a very auspicious person. So later people called him auspicious, meaning kind and auspicious. He was also called good manifestation. Whether it is good manifestation or Subhuti, he is the foremost in understanding emptiness within the Buddha's teachings. Including the Diamond Sutra and many Prajnaparamita teachings, the Buddha addressed them to Subhuti. Subhuti stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to him respectfully, "Ever since a time during the eons of the remote past, my mind has been without impediment, and I have been able to remember as many of my past lives as there are sand grains in the river Ganges." Here it is the same. He stood up from his seat, and after prostrating at the Buddha's feet, he respectfully said to the Buddha, "Since eons in the remote past, for many lifetimes, my mind has obtained an unimpeded state. Unlike us, the karmic habits he brought from the past were exceptionally good. For beginningless eons, for many lifetimes, his mind had no obstacles. Moreover, he had the supernormal ability to recall past lives. He could remember an incredible number of past lifetimes. He could recall so many lifetimes he had experienced, and the number of these lifetimes was as numerous as the grains of sand in the river Ganges. He was able to recall them all. Even in my mother's womb, I have been aware of the stillness of emptiness. I have understood that everything throughout the 10 directions is empty, and I have also led other beings to understand that all is empty. While still in his mother's womb, he already knew. After we are born, we learn many words, and after we grow up and our hair turns white, we still might not understand emptiness. But Subhuti, while he was in his mother's womb, already knew that all phenomena are ultimately peaceful, empty, and pure. He understood this truth. Furthermore, all phenomena throughout the 10 directions of the universe are also understood to be empty. From a personal perspective, starting from the 5 aggregates, everything is empty. Then, from the perspective of outer phenomena, throughout the 10 directions, all phenomena are understood to be empty. Not only did he himself realize emptiness, but he also led many sentient beings to realize emptiness based on his own awakening. We also mentioned this earlier. At the time when Shakyamuni Buddha descended from the Tushita heaven to the human world, the Bhikshuni Utpalavana dressed up in all kinds of adornments and ornaments to go before the Buddha and welcome him. But Subhuti stayed sitting in his cave and did not go to welcome him. Later the Buddha said, "The Bhikshuni Utpalavana did not see me, she only saw my physical body, which is not the true me." Subhuti contemplated emptiness, and in fact he is the one who truly saw me. The Buddha's praise for Subhuti at that time was also due to this very reason. At that time, for the benefit of all sentient beings, he realized this kind of emptiness. And what was the manner in which he realized emptiness? The Thus Come One revealed to me that the essential nature of our awareness is true emptiness, and that the essential nature of emptiness is perfect understanding. So it was that I became an arhat, and I immediately entered the sea of the magnificent luminous emptiness of the Thus Come Ones. My wisdom and my vision were then the same as the Buddha's. He verified that I needed no further instruction, and that I had no equal in my achievement of liberation through understanding that all is empty. Then he says, relying on the blessings of the Thus Come One, relying on the Thus Come One's inspiration or protection for him, he has realized that the essential nature of awareness is true emptiness. He has awakened to emptiness, meaning the non-duality of awareness and emptiness. Whether it is called empty nature as true awareness, or true awareness as empty nature, the true original face of the Tathagata Garbha, the state of union between emptiness and luminosity, has been fully realized, and in this realized state, emptiness and perfection, with luminosity pervading everywhere, is the state achieved. Once this state was attained, he naturally attained the fruition of an arhat. As for the term arhat used here, Subhuti is generally considered an accomplished practitioner of our Mahayana vehicle, but sometimes regarding the term arhat, we use the term Bhagavan. Bhagavan actually refers to one who has destroyed all the afflictions of the three realms and is endowed with all virtues. Therefore, the title Bhagavan can refer to an arhat of the Hinayana and also to an arhat of the Mahayana. The true great arhat is our Bhagavan, the Tathagata, the perfectly enlightened Buddha. The Buddha is the true great arhat. So when we say arhat, we shouldn't necessarily think, oh, it must be Hinayana. We shouldn't understand it that way. As for arhat, sometimes bodhisattvas are also called arhats. The Buddha is also called an arhat. Among Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, as mentioned in the Abhidharmakosha, practitioners on the path of no more learning are also called arhats. So Subhuti says that at that time he attained the arhat fruition and immediately realized the Thus Come One's precious, luminous, empty, ocean-like state. At this time his view was the same as the Buddha's, meaning that Subhuti's view at that time was just like the Buddha's, because from the perspective of severing afflictions and realizing emptiness, some commentaries say his view was identical to the Buddha's. When we discuss the Madhyamaka, some philosophical schools believe that as long as one attains the arhat fruition, there is no difference between what they realize and the Buddha's realization of emptiness. Some have such an explanation. However, there are differences in some of his manifestations. Some explain it this way. Others say it is because Subhuti had already become a Buddha long ago. For instance, in the Zhengmai commentary on the Shurangama Sutra and some other commentaries, they say he had attained Buddhahood long ago. His title at that time was the Blue Dragon Tathagata. So he also stated at that time that when he immediately entered this supreme state, he was actually no different from a Buddha, having already attained Buddhahood. It carries this meaning as well. Once he had attained this stage of no more learning, he liberated himself from afflictions and realized emptiness. Precisely because of this, I had no equal. He became the foremost in understanding emptiness in Buddhism. In terms of realizing emptiness, or in terms of understanding emptiness, he is the foremost, the most outstanding. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I understood that all is empty, and also that what understands emptiness and the emptiness that is understood are empty as well. To return the cognitive faculty to purity, so that all phenomena are understood to be empty, that is the best method. If the Buddha asks me about the cause of perfect penetration to attain Buddhahood, what is it? According to the realization I have achieved through my practice, all phenomena, all appearances actually enter into the state of non-existence. The essence of all phenomena, all appearances are non-appearances. That is what we mean when we say, a vase is not a vase, a pillar is not a pillar. These things that appear to us do not truly exist. Some consider this to be mere emptiness because it only negates one side. Then what understands emptiness and the emptiness that is understood are empty as well. The emptiness grasped by mere emptiness also does not truly exist. It is also exhausted. This negates the second and third extremes, to return the cognitive faculty to purity. Ultimately, all dualistic phenomena are also unestablished. This refers to everything. Conversely, any phenomena, whether it is the appearances mentioned earlier, or emptiness, or both emptiness and appearances, or neither emptiness nor appearances, all of these are non-existent. This so-called non-existence is great emptiness. Here it seems all of this is about his cognitive faculty, the mind. The mind, he needs to know that the phenomena grasped by the mind, the objects of the mind are phenomena. All of these are completely empty. So for him, that is the best method. The so-called mind, the mind is the best for realizing emptiness. The circumstances of each sage are different. After finishing these faculties, we come to the 6 consciousnesses. The 12th is Sariputra, who attained realization relying on eye consciousness. Sariputra stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, "Ever since a time during the eons of the remote past, my eye consciousness has been pure. Thus, for as many lifetimes as there are sand grains in the river Ganges, I have been able in a single glance to understand without impediment the various changing phenomena, both worldly and world-transcending. Today's content is not very difficult. There is no need for me to explain it in too much detail. Everyone should be quite clear about it. As for Sariputra, as you all know, he was named after his mother. He was also extremely wise, foremost in wisdom. I believe by the age of 8 he had mastered all 18 major fields of study in India. And while in his mother's womb, because he was so wise at that time, his mother also became very skilled in debate. He too stood up from his cushion, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and spoke to the Buddha as follows: "Ever since a time during the eons of the remote past, my eye consciousness has been pure." What follows seems to be about eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness. They all seem to be related to the 6 sense faculties. But when true realization actually occurs below, it is always realized from the mind. Everyone probably understands this as well. Because what we call faculties, a faculty is part of the physical body. It cannot attain realization. In fact, all the 6 sense consciousnesses are connected to one's own mind. If they were not connected to the mind, even if you have eyes, even if your eyes see something, you might not react to it. Therefore, every sense consciousness mentioned below actually attains realization through the mind. It is not realized through the eyes or the ears. It's just that there is a slight connection with their causes and conditions. Ultimately, when reaching deep understanding, it is entered directly through the mind. Perhaps everyone should look into this aspect. Why is this eye consciousness? There is a difference. He says, since beginningless time, because his karmic habits were also very good, since eons in the remote past, his eye consciousness has been pure. Unlike us, our mind and eyes are impure. Whenever we see something, discriminating thoughts and wrong views immediately arise in our minds. But Sariputra here, his eye consciousness, in some commentaries, including Master Oi's, some explain that eye consciousness actually refers to what the eyes see. After the eyes see, all his faculties remain pure. For example, when our eyes see beautiful forms, it might become a cause for greed or anger. But as soon as his eyes see something, everything becomes pure. Not only does it not bring afflictions to his mind stream, but it actually generates wisdom. So his eye consciousness attained purity. His enlightenment happened upon seeing appearances. So then, for how many years has his eye consciousness been pure like this? Actually, it was also throughout lifetimes as numerous as the sands of the Ganges. Throughout all those lifetimes his eye consciousness or his mind was pure. And regarding the various changes in worldly and world-transcending phenomena, including arising and ceasing, arising, abiding, changing and ceasing, and so on, all these phenomena and changes, in a single glance he understands them without impediment. As soon as he sees these phenomena, he immediately comprehends their true nature without any impediment. It doesn't seem to be that way for us. For us, even just to understand one person's personality is very difficult. But for Sariputra, as long as it was a worldly or world-transcending phenomenon, the moment it flashed before his eyes, it became instantly clear. He immediately understood it in his heart, without encountering any obstacles. We have many obstacles. After interacting for a long time, we might say, wow, so this person is actually like this. We look at that vase for a very long time before saying, oh, so the vase is impermanent. Oh, so that's how it is. It takes a long time for us to react, and sometimes our reaction is still inaccurate. But Shariputra's insight into all phenomena was entirely understood at a single glance. This was the case for all his wisdom. Then he explains, how did he attain enlightenment? I once met the Kashyapa brothers walking together along a road. I joined them and they explained to me the doctrine of causes and conditions. I thereupon woke up to the boundlessness of the mind. Once, while he was on the road, some of our commentaries say he met the Bhikshu Ashvajit, and they went together to where the Buddha was. Here it says that while on the road he met the Kashyapa brothers. There were 3 brothers. It seems the Mahaprajna Paramita Sastra and many other texts explain this quite clearly. These 3 brothers were discussing the law of causes and conditions together. Then he joined their discussion about the principle that all phenomena arise from conditions and cease due to conditions. Right then and there he woke up to the boundlessness of the mind and became enlightened. This state of having no boundaries whatsoever, he had attained it. He went there with Modgalyana. It seems in the Mahaprajna Paramita Sastra, it says he attained it by hearing, not by seeing with his eyes. You can check it when it's convenient for you. Last winter I translated some Tibetan texts. There is a story earlier in the text about someone called the long-nailed Brahmin. Why was he called the long-nailed Brahmin? He was a very remarkable person, a very outstanding scholar in India at the time, but later he debated with his sister. During the debate he couldn't win. He later thought, it must not be my sister who is so remarkable, it must be the child in her womb who is very remarkable. Then he started to worry. Before the child was even born, he thought, if I don't improve my learning, after he is born I might be even more outmatched. So he traveled to southern India to begin seeking knowledge. When he went to study, he declared, if I do not master the 18 fields of study, I will not return. And at the same time I will not cut my nails. He made this vow. When people asked him about it, he told some people but not others. Then he studied very diligently. Eventually, all this knowledge, some people told him, it's impossible for you. You won't be able to master the 18 major fields of study in one lifetime. It cannot be mastered. But he worked very hard, and his wisdom was also extraordinary. After finishing his studies, when he returned, his nephew, his sister's son, was no longer there. He asked where he went. After asking, he learned he went to Shakyamuni Buddha. He became very angry. So when he went to see Shakyamuni Buddha, right there in front of Shakyamuni Buddha, Sariputra was acting as his, I'm not mistaken, it was Sariputra? He was fanning the Buddha. When the precepts were recited, he was assisting him. At this time the Brahmin, feeling somewhat defiant, started debating with the Buddha on Madhyamaka and Prajna concepts. He kept debating with the Buddha. In the end, Sariputra was standing nearby, listening. In the end, the long-nailed Brahmin lost. He couldn't help but admire the Buddha's wisdom. Right then and there he realized the emptiness of prajna, and at this time Sariputra was also listening by their side. During the course of their debate, Sariputra attained enlightenment at that moment. The long-nailed Brahmin then renounced the world and became a monk right in front of the Buddha. Later he attained the arhat fruition. Bodhisattva Nagarjuna explained the reason why the Buddha needed to teach the emptiness of prajna is also because of this. Even non-Buddhists, after hearing the teachings on the emptiness of prajna, eventually attain enlightenment as well. That long-nailed Brahmin, in the end, his nails must have certainly. Non-Buddhists generally have this practice too, but in our Buddhist tradition, His Holiness's nails, he trimmed them regularly. However, they were still quite long. As for His Holiness's body, there was indeed a difference. Actually, we didn't cherish those moments back then. Often when we traveled, sometimes I would cut His Holiness's nails. Both fingernails and toenails needed to be trimmed. Sometimes when His Holiness was going to sleep, we had to pluck his beard for him. Sometimes it seemed like His Holiness had fallen asleep. But if we plucked carelessly, he would immediately open his eyes and look at us, which was very frightening. Because when he was truly asleep, we couldn't pluck forcefully. Otherwise he would wake up again. So doing it very slowly was fine. When he seemed to be asleep, he would suddenly open his eyes wide and stare, which was especially terrifying. At that time there were many things that we just didn't particularly cherish. Usually, after a master has passed away, only then do you perhaps realize many things that you should have paid attention to at the time. This is what he said back then. This is how he attained enlightenment at that time. I followed the Buddha into the monastic life. The clarity of my visual awareness was perfected, and I became utterly fearless. So it was that I became an arhat. From that time on, Sariputra originally followed a non-Buddhist path, and then he became a monk. After becoming a monk, he perceived the state of perfect clarity and luminosity of awareness, and attained the arhat fruition with the four fearlessness. The common vehicle also has the four fearlessness of an arhat's fruition. I was reborn from the Buddha's mouth, reborn by being transformed by the Dharma. From that moment on, Sariputra became the Buddha's senior disciple. Within the Sravakayana, he is the senior disciple. He is a disciple born from the Buddha's teachings, from his mouth. This is what we call a Sravaka, one who attains realization from the Buddha's speech. It can also be said that he was reborn by being transformed by the Buddha's Dharma. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I myself was able to verify that my eye consciousness had become radiant with light, and when that light reached its ultimate intensity, it illuminated the wisdom and vision of the Buddhas. I believe that this is the best method. If the Buddha asks what is the cause for the perfect penetration of Bodhi, based on my monastic practice and the state I have realized, my eye consciousness became radiant with light. Here, whether it is seeing with the eyes or perceiving with the mind, because whatever he sees, he immediately realizes its nature. Actually, this visual perception, in the final analysis, is still connected to the mind's perception. Then the wisdom arising from this mental perception, the light of wisdom, this light is the radiance of wisdom triggered by visual perception. And this light of wisdom, the most ultimate, most complete light, this is the true reality of the Tathagata Garbha. Light reaching its ultimate intensity is the ultimate reality of the Tathagata Garbha. So for him, eye consciousness is considered the best method. Eye consciousness is the most important for his achievement and practice, because for someone like him, such realization perhaps wouldn't be anything extraordinary. And if we had positive habits accumulated over lifetimes as numerous as the Ganges sands, it would be relatively easy for us too. Now we look at these 25 sages and greatly rejoice, but we should look at ourselves to see how we are doing. Next is the 13th, the Bodhisattva universal goodness. The Bodhisattva Universal Goodness stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet and said to him respectfully, "I have been a prince in the Dharma in the assemblies of as many thus come ones as there are sand grains in the river Ganges. Throughout all 10 directions the thus come ones teach their disciples who have an innate propensity for the path of the Bodhisattva to undertake the practice of universal goodness, the practice for which I am named." Next is the Bodhisattva Universal Goodness. The Bodhisattva Universal Goodness also stood up from his cushion, bowed at the Buddha's feet and spoke to the Buddha as follows, "I have been in the assemblies of thus come ones, as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, serving as a prince of the Dharma for them all, the senior disciple of the thus come ones." As the King of Aspiration Prayers also states, all Tathagatas have a senior disciple, whose name is Samantabhadra. So our Bodhisattva Universal Goodness is actually the senior disciple of all thus come ones. Many thus come ones regard him as their. Perhaps we have this in the worldly realm too. For instance, if someone is capable, they might do volunteer work for many gurus. Sometimes this guru might be displeased, or that guru might be displeased, making it very painful in the middle. But in some cases, becoming the senior disciple of this guru, and the senior disciple of that guru, there are many, like the Bodhisattva Universal Goodness, for the thus come ones in the 10 directions, he is exceptionally in the presence of the thus come ones in the 10 directions, he has attained such a bodhisattva fruition. The thus come ones in the 10 directions treat him as a disciple. Disciples with an innate propensity for the bodhisattva path refers to those disciples of the thus come ones in the 10 directions who possess the roots of virtue of a bodhisattva. People with a bodhisattva capacity, a Mahayana capacity, all practice the King of Aspiration prayers. In our Avatamsaka Sutra, there is the King of Aspiration prayers in both prose and verse. These aspirations are all based on the King of Prayers of Samantabhadra. The 10 great vows of Samantabhadra originated with this name. When we speak of the 10 great vows of Samantabhadra, actually it's not just Shakyamuni Buddha and his disciples who practice them. In fact, the thus come ones in all 10 directions practice them. We should also know now that the King of Aspiration prayers is not only practiced in Tibetan Buddhism and Han Buddhism. Many Mahayana Buddhist traditions practice it. In our Tibetan Buddhism as well, people from all schools recite it. In Han Buddhism, everyone also practices it. Similarly, the disciples of different thus come ones will all practice this Dharma of universal goodness. This is the Bodhisattva Universal Goodness. He first describes some of his own virtues. World-honored one, with my ear consciousness I am aware of the thoughts and viewpoints of every individual being. Whenever any of these beings even considers undertaking the practices of universal goodness, including the beings in worlds that are beyond still other worlds, as many as the sand grains in the river Ganges, I generate hundreds of thousands of distinct bodies, and mounted on my 6-tusked elephant, I go separately to the places where these beings are. Here the Bodhisattva Universal Goodness says, I listen with my mind. You see, originally this was discussing ear consciousness, discussing perfect penetration through ear consciousness. As for perfect penetration through ear consciousness, here, this consciousness of the ear faculty, actually in the final analysis, is also connected to the mind. Therefore the Bodhisattva Universal Goodness says, it is my mind that can listen. Listen to what? There are many different sentient beings throughout the worlds of the 10 directions, all their views and thoughts, the various views of all sentient beings in the 10 directions. What kind of views? If outside of our Saha world, beyond worlds as numerous as the sands of the Ganges, if there is a sentient being who begins to think or make vows in their heart, or practice the aspirations of universal goodness, practicing the 10 great vows of Samantabhadra, then what does the Bodhisattva Universal Goodness do? He immediately, because his mind can listen to all of it, as long as it's from someone throughout the worlds of the 10 directions, the Bodhisattva Universal Goodness hears it immediately. and immediately upon hearing it, his 6-tusked white elephant is ready at the door. He immediately mounts the 6-tusked white elephant and rushes off. Ah, there's one over there. And over there, here's someone reciting. If everyone in our shrine hall recites, he might be a bit overwhelmed, so he immediately manifests multiple bodies. Manifesting multiple bodies is very easy for him. Otherwise, some people nowadays say, when I get off work and can't find a parking spot, I pray to the Guru, but then I think, the Guru must be very busy. So many people can't find parking spots right now and are praying. So I don't dare to pray, not wanting to bother the Guru. We don't need to worry about this, thinking, the Bodhisattva universal goodness is too tired. We shouldn't think that way. He immediately goes throughout the 10 directions of worlds, beyond the Ganges sands. This Saha world is very simple for him. In those worlds beyond the Ganges sands, if there are sentient beings, he immediately rides his 6-tusked white elephant, manifesting bodies to go to them. Just like when we make Samantabhadra's cloud offerings, he manifests and manifests and manifests again. He continuously emanates hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, nayutas of bodies, and they all arrive there. Indeed, why did past masters place such great importance on it? Actually, His Holiness truly placed immense importance on the King of Aspiration prayers. We have also taught it once or twice in the past, the King of Aspiration prayers. The content of the King of Aspiration prayers. It is also very important. As practitioners of the Mahayana teachings, being able to recite the King of Aspiration prayers once a day is extremely excellent. When we have classes, everyone recites the King of Aspiration prayers. If there is no class, I also hope that each of us will uninterruptedly every day, just like our Larung daily chants, we should actually recite the practice of Buddha Shakyamuni and the King of Aspiration prayers uninterruptedly once a day. If we do this, our lives will truly be meaningful. If we have a superior capacity, attaining enlightenment in this life, attaining the rainbow body in this life, these are of course the best. But even if we cannot achieve that, amidst the vast sea of humanity, we have still received the 6-syllable mantra. We can recite the King of Aspiration prayers, and we can use the prayer wheel. Look, before and after our classes now, we basically spend nearly an hour. From 7:30 to 8 o'clock, everyone uses their prayer wheels, and afterward there is nearly another 10 minutes spent reciting the King of Aspiration prayers. In this way, even if someone's visualization is not perfect, these roots of virtue will certainly not be exhausted. Therefore, we are still extremely fortunate amidst our misfortunes, you could say. That is what I believe. Some of us feel very inferior, thinking, my afflictions are deep, I am full of suffering and afflictions. In this world, it's really, everything seems to be, how should I put it? Today it's very cold, it's miserable. Today it's very hot, it's miserable. The food isn't good, the clothes aren't nice, the Dharma teachers in my class aren't nice to me. Doing volunteer work doesn't go well. My health is bad, my mood is bad. The roads are hard to walk on, the water doesn't taste good, the medicine tastes awful. Oh, what can I do? Actually, sometimes having this kind of renunciation is also very good. Without renunciation there is no liberation. However, sometimes people are too insecure and view even the good aspects. You see, the other day His Holiness said, when we are dying, even if we have no roots of virtue, we must imagine that we do. We should visualize our small roots of virtue as great ones. Sometimes people need to have a kind of self-confidence. You must have a sense of confidence. Do not pile all the negative things together and leave out all the positive things. On the other hand, some are too arrogant. They have no real practice, but they think, I am so great, I must be an emanation of the Bodhisattva universal goodness. Just today when I was heading up, a female practitioner was coming down. I don't know why, but she said, could I be the emanation of a certain monastic? She asked me this right on the road. I was a bit startled and asked, which class are you in? She seemed to be a monastic, but I won't mention the name of the Khenpo for that class. So sometimes having overly arrogant self-confidence, I think it's definitely a bit abnormal or something. I'm not quite sure. Therefore I feel we truly shouldn't be overly arrogant and self-confident. That would also be a kind of obstacle, and some people shouldn't be too insecure. It is true that, in a certain sense, our practice is not that good. We have received many empowerments, yet we haven't kept our samaya or precepts very well. So it's natural to feel a bit insecure. But in another sense, in this Dharma-ending age, there are so many sentient beings who do not even have the chance to hear a single Om Mani Padme Hum. Yet we still have this opportunity. We can even study the Mahayana teachings, and we get to hear such wonderful accounts of the 25 great disciples, and the magnificent stories of how they each attained realization in their respective domains. Therefore, sometimes we should feel confident. Here the Bodhisattva universal goodness comes before every single sentient being to bestow blessings. At this time he says, even if a being is heavily impeded and is not able to see me, I circle my hand on the crown of that being's head to lend support and give comfort in order to help him succeed in his practice. The Bodhisattva universal goodness says, when I come before them, because some sentient beings have very heavy karmic obstacles, it's impossible for them to see me. However, I can secretly rub the crown of their head. You won't even know it yourself. He does it quietly. While you are reciting the King of Aspiration prayers, well, let me give you a rub. Let's see in a bit, when we recite the King of Aspiration prayers, if you feel anything. If the top of your head feels a bit itchy, it means the Bodhisattva universal goodness is touching our crowns. Truly, this is the Vajra speech of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Secretly touching the crown, as well as protecting and comforting, he constantly protects us. Some commentaries say that when we recite the King of Aspiration prayers, the blessings of the Bodhisattva universal goodness dispel our inner, outer and secret obstacles. We humans have many obstacles, so this helps our practice to go smoothly. Indeed, sometimes I personally feel this way when I come back and continuously give teachings, although sometimes there seem to be minor hindrances, perhaps due to the blessings of universal goodness or something else. The teachings are basically completed successfully every year. This is definitely due to the blessings of many Dharma protectors, while those with a superior capacity might frequently see the physical manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. If that is not the case, people like us with heavy karmic obscurations might not necessarily see them, but in reality we still receive his blessings. The Zhengmai commentary on the Shurangama Sutra says, for those with light obstacles he blesses them manifestly, for those with heavy obstacles he blesses them secretly. If someone has relatively light obstacles, he will manifest in various ways to bless you. For those with heavier obstacles and deep karma, he blesses you secretly. As long as you have faith, the Bodhisattva universal goodness will bless you. 1,000 rivers have water, 1,000 rivers reflect the moon, as we often say. Therefore, whoever has faith, the Bodhisattva universal goodness will be present to bless them. This phrase is very important. Speaking of our Larangar, truly, all the lineage disciples recite the Chinese version of the King of Aspiration prayers and the Tibetan version of the King of Aspiration prayers, and it seems that for us this should be extremely important. However, if it's chanted a bit too fast, it seems you all don't chant it very smoothly. A couple of days ago, when Larungar chanted it together, I heard that many of you couldn't quite keep up. At times like that, His Holiness used to say, the chant leader cannot go too fast. Some monasteries chant entirely too fast. When it's too fast, there's simply no way to follow. So the other day, didn't we chant that afternoon? I heard the chanting was a bit fast then, but I asked some Tibetan lamas, and the Tibetan lamas said the pace was just right. They felt quite comfortable chanting it. Sometimes chanting in another language is indeed a bit difficult. Regardless, the Bodhisattva universal goodness gives you protection, blessings, and safeguards you, so as to bring to fruition all your great vows like the 10 great vows of Samantabhadra. So everyone should remember this passage, you should write it down. We recite it frequently, and for some people, we can say it like this. Since arriving at Larungar, we have basically been reciting it for 30 or 40 years, nearly 40 years. When traveling away, sometimes it might get interrupted, but I try my best, even when I'm away and not formally teaching a class, to try and recite it by myself every day. Sometimes I recite it while nodding off. Sometimes I recite it when I get up in the morning. For many of my daily recitations, the quality might not necessarily be very good, because during the normal daytime hours there are translation tasks and various other things arranged, and then suddenly, wow, it's very late, it's time to sleep. Oh, I haven't done today's recitations yet, and then I start reciting. If the daytime schedule is very tight, I get up in the morning and recite while yawning. So my daily chanting is quite poor, the quality isn't great, but I keep trying. Therefore, for each of us, some people might have been here for over 20 years and still recite it every day. In that case, the blessings of the Bodhisattva universal goodness towards us are certain. Moreover, if we look at the biographies of the 8 great Bodhisattvas, the merits of the Bodhisattva universal goodness are also extremely touching. Everyone should know this. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I have described the basis of my practice. My mind listens with the complete understanding that results from free and unattached discernment. That is the best method. If the Buddha asks about the cause for perfect penetration to Bodhi, I should say, regarding his original cause, at the time when he was on the causal path, or during his initial process of generating the bodhicitta resolve, my mind listens with complete understanding. The listening he mentions here is perceived using the mind. Using the mind, it doesn't say that he heard it using his ears, the ear faculty. He didn't say that. Then this awakening manifested as inner luminosity, and he attained freedom from all discriminatory thoughts. Some sutras mention that the Bodhisattva universal goodness used the lion's roar samadhi and the great Shurangama samadhi to manifest the supreme state. Using the lion's roar samadhi, he attained mastery over all discriminations and all phenomena. He used the great vows of Samantabhadra to become free from all bondage. Therefore, each of these great sages has explained the process of their own realization. At the same time, they also explain the methods they rely on to benefit sentient beings. So for him, this ear consciousness is the most supreme and most important for Bodhi. Let's cover one more. We should have enough time today. Next, this should be the 14th disciple among the 25 disciples, the one who attained realization relying on nose consciousness. Sundarananda stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, "When I first entered the monastic life to follow the Buddha on the path, I kept the precepts perfectly, but in trying to enter samadhi, my mind was always too scattered and too easily distracted, so that I could not put an end to my outflows." Here he speaks of Sundara. Sundara means Nanda. It shouldn't be Ananda. There are quite a few people named Nanda. Ananda, cowherd Nanda. There was specifically a herder named Nanda, and then there's Ananda. It is said that the reason his name was Why was he named after his wife? To avoid confusion with the others. It's easy to mix him up with the other Nandas, so he was called Sundarananda. Sundarai is the one mentioned in the words of my perfect teacher, that Bhadrika, the one who couldn't bear to part with his wife, he was named after her. Still bearing her name after he became a monk, it's a bit she might not have been very happy about it. Then he stood up from his cushion. It seems the Tibetan text doesn't say it this way, it just says Nanda directly. Sundarananda was intentionally added in the Chinese translation. I'm not sure if it's there in the original Sanskrit. It's not in the Tibetan version. Stood up, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and said to him respectfully, "Oh, I just said that." So he also stood up from his cushion, bowed at the Buddha's feet, and addressed the Buddha. He said, "When I first became a monk and followed the Buddha to learn the path, entering the path, although my precepts were pure, although I encountered various hindrances, I didn't break my precepts. But regarding samadhi, his precepts were okay, but his samadhi, his meditation practice, was very poor. In samadhi his mind was always scattered, always wandering. When he sat down to meditate, he probably often thought of his wife or thought of other things. As Tsangyang Gyatso said in his love song, while resting in a pure retreat, the face of the Buddha I should visualize refuses to appear, but the face of the lover I shouldn't think of naturally appears, constantly floating before my eyes. Just like that, his mind was always scattered, so he hadn't attained the undefiled fruition. Ultimately, the world-honored one taught Mahakaustila and me to focus our attention on the whiteness visible at the tip of the nose. Later, the world-honored one taught him and Sariputra's uncle, the long-nailed Brahmin I mentioned the other day should be Mahakaustila, whom I just spoke about briefly. At that time, the Buddha taught Ananda and the long-nailed Brahmin to visualize. What did they visualize? They visualized a white object at the tip of their nose, a white appearance, a white form. Then Ananda said, "I shouldn't say Ananda, right? Nanda, we usually call him Nanda, and Ananda is just called Ananda, right? His name is Sundarananda. What is he usually called? Nanda. And Ananda is just called Ananda, right? His name is Sundarananda. What is he usually called? Nanda. And Ananda." He said, "After 3 weeks of focusing my attention in this way, my breath looked like smoke as it entered and left my nostrils. My body and mind shone with an inner light that illuminated the entire world. Everything became as clear and as pure as crystal." Here he says, when he first started to observe, there was a patch of white at the tip of the nose, a white form. Then I went on to carefully observe this form. This is actually a visualization relying on the nose faculty. It's really about the breath inside the nose. What we discussed earlier was also about the breath, the exhaling and inhaling. Just like this. So then he visualizing a white form at the tip of his nose, along with his exhaling and inhaling. He practiced this meditation for 3 weeks, 21 days. 3 times 7 days, and doing this he finally saw this breath within his nose. Normally we cannot see air with our eyes, but through the power of his visualization, as he breathed, after he saw the white form, he gradually began to see this breath. The appearance of the breath was like smoke as it entered and left. His inhaling and exhaling looked like smoke billowing out. Normally this probably wouldn't happen for us. Then he continued to observe his body and mind shining with inner light. This body consciousness relying on this, because earlier he was using his nose consciousness, right? By relying on this nose consciousness, he continued to observe this inner light. And with this inner light, this world that is perfectly clear and penetrating ultimately became supremely pure. Just like crystal, the whole world manifested as a purely clean world. The smokiness of the breath in my nostrils was gradually refined until it became white. My true mind was revealed and my outflows were ended. My in-breath and out-breath were transformed into light that shone upon worlds throughout all 10 directions. So it was that I became an arhat. He just visualized gradually like this, and finally, this smoke-like appearance. At first there was a white form, then a smoke-like form, and then the smoke-like form gradually disappeared. In the end, the breath within his nose turned into a kind of whiteness again. Actually, this must be a method of meditation focusing on an object. Then his mind attained enlightenment. All outflows, all defiled phenomena were exhausted. All his inhaling and exhaling ultimately transformed into light, into wisdom, this innate light of wisdom, and such light of wisdom also illuminated the worlds of the 10 directions. Of course, this is not a light that emits red or white colors as we normally think of it. like what is described in the Pilindavatsa Sutra, where white produces white light, red produces red light, and yellow produces yellow light. It's definitely not like that. His light of wisdom pervaded the entire world. At that point he had already attained the Arhat fruition. The world-honored one predicted that in the future I would realize perfect enlightenment. The world-honored one prophesied at that time that he would definitely attain Bodhi in the future. He temporarily attained the Arhat fruition and would attain perfect enlightenment in the future. The Buddha has asked us how we broke through to enlightenment. I refined my breath until at length it shone with light, and when the light shone everywhere, my outflows were ended. This is the best method. If the Buddha asks me about the method of perfect penetration, then I would say it must be my nose consciousness. First there were appearances including this smoke-like form and white form. Then gradually everything disappeared, and finally this luminous wisdom abided in all worlds. In the end, my breath slowly transformed into what? It triggered the innate luminosity that I originally possessed, and this innate luminosity is actually perfect. It is perfect, extinguishing all defiled phenomena. For me, among all things, nose consciousness is the most important for realization, because he relied on this kind of meditation to attain realization. So this is his particular state. Well then, we will conclude our teaching for today here.
Bandharangara Padma Sadar